Welcome to Discovering. I'm standing at one of the entrances to Miners Memorial Heritage Park in Ironwood.
When the mines were abandoned, they left a huge swath of land right in the middle of town, really close to neighborhoods. So right in the center of town is a beautiful natural resource area with trails, of course, what we'll be talking about today.
And 100 years ago, this was the site of the Pabst mine disaster, one of the most difficult and remarkable rescues in mining history.
There's the cave-in. There's where the men were trapped. It's 800 feet below.
There's a reverence here that hopefully is being, remembered.
So sit back and relax. It's Monday night, and it's time for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forests thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
Located on the east side of Ironwood is a 170-acre park lined with silent sports trails that looks a lot different today than it did 100 years ago when it was part of a cluster of iron ore mines along the Gogebic Iron Range. To learn more about the iron mining history of this area, I met up with local historians Ivan Helen and Tom Kangas.
This is the landscape that Ironwood had during the mining days. Resembles a war zone because everything was barren. They cut down all the trees. They needed the trees for timber and shoring in the mines, and there's quite a few different head frames. This is taken from the Iron King.
The Gogebic Range covers about 25 miles, maybe 30, from Iron Belt, Wisconsin to Wakefield. There were a few exploratory mines further east and further west, but there were 12 to 15 major mines in the Gogebic Range. Our ore deposit runs from southwest to northeast. It's only about 100 yards north of the footwall is the ore deposit.
This ore deposit was first discovered on the east end of the park near the present-day dog park.
If it wasn't for the Chicago and Peshtigo fires in October of 1871, iron ore may not have been discovered, or Ironwood might not have been here, because Raphael Pompelli, one of the only and first professionally trained mining engineers and explorers, was walking through probably this exact area we're standing, looking for iron deposits, and he had sponsorship from the big shots down in Boston, and he went all the way to Lake Gogebic and back, and he never did find anything, and they told him just to forget it and come back. And when he was walking, he could see a cloud of smoke in the horizon, and he was fearful of his party who was waiting by the Montreal River for him to come back. So he climbed a big hill, which would later become Newport Hill, and he noticed that the smoke was in a distance, quite a ways away. So while sitting there on a rock, he noticed the formation of iron oxides in the rocks, and he went against his Boston partners and purchased 2 big sections of land, and it wasn't until another 10 years, really, that the development of iron ore began here.
The first shipments of iron ore left the region in 1884.
We are standing at the Aurora number 5 powerhouse ruins. There was a string of mines along this stretch of the Pinokie Ridge Trail. There were railroad tracks that ran through here. and they were doing that open pit mining. Early on, there were wooden head frames that, like elevators for hoisting out the ore and the miners. And then they would just move them along the early open pits that they had here. And then eventually when they sunk shafts, they went to metal head frames that were hoisting houses. At one time, probably about 18 head frames from Iron Belt to Wakefield. But I said there were 12 to 15 major mines that ran probably 70 to 80 years.
The mines of the Gogebic Range were among the deepest underground iron mines in the country and some of the most dangerous. 1,100 miners were killed in its 80-year history.
There are places in this park, if you're conscious, where you become aware of kind of sacred ground. This is one of them. The other one is the Pabst area. But sometimes as you're just quietly walking around, you kind of imagine yourself among miners who walked through here to get to work, who, were under the ground here, some of them who died here. And it's in many ways, this area is, I consider it sacred ground.
For years, the Gogebic Range was the largest source of high-grade iron ore. Iron production on the Gogebic Range totaled 225 million tons.
You can't forget the sacrifice that these people, these miners made, and the contribution that they made to America. Most people don't even realize. They just think of iron ore, but they don't realize how that iron ore was used in the steel industry. And without steel, we wouldn't have had anything.
We talk a lot about how much iron ore was taken out of here. Really helped us win the World War II, right? They built ships and planes, and without that, who knows? And the fact that there was so much iron ore taken out of this area, they needed to build 2 railroad grades.
The most well-known mine in the range was the Pabst, due to the disaster that struck on September 24th, 1926.
I'm at the site of the famed Pabst mine. It was named after Captain Frederick Pabst and the Pabst Brewery in Milwaukee.
The Pabst mine was part of the Oliver Iron Mining Company, owned by U.S. Steel.
It started off as a normal day for the miners here on this site. It had been a rainy week, as much as 10 inches of rain fell. And this being a wet mine shaft to begin with, it must have loosened up the soil. And so the miners were working down underground, and 3 electricians decided they'd go down and check everything out. And that's when the cave-in occurred, fall of rock, and it, naturally the weight of it took the cage down right to the bottom, 2,600 feet, and of course they were killed instantly.
The cave-in happened just above the 8th level of the shaft, where 40 miners were working. 3 other men were working at the 13th and 18th levels. A second cave-in occurred at the 21st level.
So they were trapped 800 feet underground at this site. And there's different accounts on the papers that show 41, 42, and then 43, because 3 of them were not in the same area.
It made national headlines as the Pabst mine disaster.
The reason they claim it to be the disaster was because the amount of time they spent underground trying to get rescued, which was 5 days. So the whole world was actually watching at this site. I have newspaper clippings from all over here, and there's Canada, and when Hollywood puts them on the front page, it's got to be important. And it was actually a good thing it happened when it did, because their shift was almost over, and they would have been coming up maybe 15 minutes later, and if that cable had snapped then, all 43 would have been killed at the bottom. And another thing about that is if they had gotten up, 60-some men were scheduled on the next shift to go down. So if it had happened then, it would have been even a worse disaster. So I don't know if you can say that's something positive or not, because people did lose their lives, but nevertheless, it could have been a lot worse.
History calls this a disaster, but in reality, it was a miracle because those 43 miners were rescued in one of the most remarkable and difficult rescues in mining history. 100 years ago, on September 29th, 1926, right here in this spot, 43 miners saw daylight for the first time in 5 days. It was a massive rescue operation. Over the course of those 5 days, all mining operations ceased across the Gogebic Range as 300 rescuers worked around the clock to free those miners entombed underground.
They kept alive, by the way, on the water that was seeping in, and one guy missed his lunch period, and he had his lunch pail with his full of food, and what they did is they were going to ration off little sections of bread to the people. One guy ate 3 of his corncob pipes in order to survive.
Underground, the men did everything they could to survive and find a way out.
They had an excellent captain on the crew, and one of the survivors was in an accident 2 years prior in a coal mine in Pennsylvania where he was trapped underground.
Multiple rescue crews simultaneously attempted to reach the trapped miners from a few different directions, digging a new passageway at the Pabst G shaft that caved in, tunneling over and up from the 13th level of the Aurora F shaft, and the most difficult and ultimately successful mission using the Pabst H shaft, where they bored vertical tunnels up from the 24th level and around the caved-in 21st level to reach the G shaft.
So here we are at the Pabst H shaft. This is the Pabst Mine rescue site, and this is the shaft that stood on this fenced-in area that went down 2,600 feet.
Right here is a diagram from Popular Science Monthly from December 1926 that shows how the rescuers were able to reach and rescue those 43 miners. So this is the shaft that collapsed, and the miners were trapped right here on the 8th level. Right here, we're at the Pabst H shaft, where the 3 rescuers went all the way down to the 24th level, went across the level, and then climbed up the 23rd, 22nd, 21st. And right here at the 21st, there was a bunch of boulders and rocks from the cave-in that they kind of had to dig and climb their way through. And here, there was a ladder that went all the way from this level up to the 8th level. The ladder wasn't in really great shape, so they had to repair the ladder going up it, but they were able to climb all the way up and rescue the 40 men that were trapped here. Actually 43. There were some men that ended up trapped here and here, but in those 5 days they climbed up and joined the 40 men, so all 43 men were right here. And then they climbed all the way back down and through, and then came right back up this rescue shaft here.
There's a picture of the men coming up. You can see their eyes are huge, because what happened is when they came up, you had 5,000 to 7,000 people who had gathered at this site, which is a huge amount, plus all these reporters. You had all these cameras going, and they were in the black here for 5 days, so I don't know if they knew what was happening when they came up with all this excitement. They had no clue.
These miners who were trapped underground lived only steps away from the mine.
And the story that I liked so much is that because people back when the mines were here didn't have cars, right? The houses were within walking distance of this park, and so that continues today. We're still within walking distance of the majority of the people in this town.
Iron ore mining forever altered the landscape. However, this central space, surrounded by communities, was a unique space full of potential.
When the mines left in the 60s, everything was scrapped out for scrap metal, and it was pretty much just abandoned, and there wasn't a whole lot going on. There was just 170 acres of just a dump.
When I first moved here about 20 years ago, this was the caving grounds, which is the old mining grounds of the city of Ironwood. The 2-mile stretch of the park was pretty much all old mine sites, so some random mining tailing ponds, those type of things. And primarily it was utilized as an area where people dumped construction waste or just random garbage, those sort of things. I think there were some sort of informal motorized trails. It was back in about 2010, 2011, somewhere around in there, where a group of people living in Ironwood got together to start talking about what else could be utilized here, because it's this incredible asset to have a huge green space in the middle of your community.
Today, the old caving grounds are now a central park here in Ironwood. Land reclaimed by nature and revitalized into silent sport trails for everyone to enjoy.
The park was established first, and so a group of people just kind of kept on hounding the city commission to make it happen, and the city commission eventually said, yeah, this is something that could work. And they created a resolution of support of the park. And then a later commission actually adopted it as a park. But part of it was this organization, this Friends of the Miners Memorial Heritage Park organization, had to be the caretakers of the park. They really needed to be the ones that were developing the trails, cleaning up the area, and they had these spring cleanups where they would pull like hundreds of tires and stuff like that.
The latest work was completed in 2023 when a DNR grant helped create more trails and park infrastructure.
What the grant was basically was to develop 10 miles of mountain bike trail here in the park, single track mountain bike trail. They could be utilized in the summertime for mountain biking and hiking, and then in the wintertime it could be used for snowshoeing and fat biking. The Sissy Dirt crew grooms it in the wintertime. But the grant was an incredible thing from the DNR, and it paid for, the space that we're sitting in right now, this parking lot and where all these picnic tables are and kiosks, and as well as provided the city with an adaptive hand cycle for people with disabilities to be able to mountain bike on the trails that the city has. So some really unique things that were provided.
So in the winter, it's cross-country skiing and snowshoeing primarily, although lots of people will just hike it as well. So it's an all-purpose trail system. In the summer, it's hiking. A lot of people run on the trails, nice single-track running trails, and then most recently a flowy mountain bike trail system. For the ski trails and for the hiking trails, there's two primary loops that are named after the mines that were here. So we have the Nori Loop and the Pabst Loop.
I think I really like, there's some beautiful views along the Pabst Pond over on the Pabst Loop. And I also really like skiing the G-Shaft Loop because it's really beautiful there, and I've seen some cool wildlife. I've seen like stoats or ermines running around there, and I just love looking at the trees and looking for wildlife, so it's really fun.
An important aspect of creating this park and trails was to preserve the history of this place. Throughout the park, photographs show you what the mines look like. Back here was the North Aurora mine.
For me, the highlights are as you ski by the old monuments of the heritage of the mining sites. Is just, I would take that extra few minutes and stop and look at those, read, learn, and reflect on their contributions to us today.
There's a reverence here that hopefully is being, remembered.
One of the purposes of our Miners Park is to hopefully soon concentrate on some type of a really important memorial for all the people who have lost their lives. Hopefully, we'd like to put up a replica headframe since the mining companies tore everything down.
There is a Friends of the Miners Memorial Heritage Park group, which takes in sponsorships and memberships that help pay for it. And then there are also opportunities, if you just come in for the day, you don't want to pay for an annual membership, you can put a donation into the box for $5 or $10. And all of that goes to everything. All of that goes to the signage, to the grooming, to the maintenance.
Because the trails are panked and kept open pretty religiously, you don't have to worry about direction. If you read the maps, you can tell where you are in the park.
The maps are clean and accurate and up to date. Again, there's 3 major trail systems. The skiing and hiking are kind of the same one, the snowshoeing, and then also the mountain biking, and each one has its own separate map. So it's, if you come to the trailhead, you would have a hard time getting lost.
90% of the households in Ironwood are within a mile of a trailhead now. That's a pretty amazing thing for any community to have a green space that's basically creates access for kids and families. It's not just a tourism thing, it's a talent attraction piece as well.
That's all for tonight, and I hope to see you right back here next week for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.